Enchanting in Minecraft sucks. This has been a frequently discussed topic in the community for a while, and today we are going to be doing a deep dive in the enchantment system and figure out what exactly is wrong with it and how we could fix it. Enchantments in Minecraft can be found in 3 different ways, and I have a problem with basically all of them. These 3 different methods for finding enchantments are getting them through the enchanting table, trading for them using villagers, and finding them as treasure loot through specific structures in the game. There is also another component in the game that we have to talk about, and that is the anvil. You can't necessarily get enchantments from the anvil, but the anvil is used to add enchantments and repair your tools and armor. I want to start this discussion with the anvil first because the anvil does have a handful of issues, but what's really annoying is that these issues can be easily fixed. The first major issue is the too expensive text that will pop up if you add too many enchantments to one piece of equipment. I think everyone could come to an agreement that this feature should just be completely removed. It can be really annoying when they add a new enchantment and you can't put it on your equipment because it becomes too expensive. It made sense back in the day when there weren't that many enchantments that you could put on your tools and equipment, but now that we are constantly getting more and more for weapons like the mace, it doesn't really make sense for this to still be a feature. Another aspect that I don't like about the anvil that not many people talk about is the exponential increase in price. Basically, as you add more and more enchantments to a tool, it becomes exponentially more expensive. This hurts the ability for Mojang to add more enchantments into the game because eventually adding an enchantment or renaming a tool that has a ton of enchantments already on it can cost hundreds of levels. If you ever played RLcraft where there are a ton of enchantments, you would experience this firsthand. Currently, the only way to get around this is by utilizing the 1-2-4-8 method, which basically requires you to use the most expensive enchantment first, then combine the second and third most expensive enchantments into one book, then combine that to your tool, then combine the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th most expensive enchantments into one book, then combine that into your tool. This is the most efficient way to enchant your items currently in the game, and it can get very confusing and very tedious, especially if Mojang plans on adding more enchantments later down the line. My solution is to make it to where each different type of enchantment has its own fixed cost. For example, if you have a sword with Mending, Unbreaking 3, Knockback 2, and Fire Aspect 2, instead of adding Sharpness and having it cost an egregious amount of levels, make it to where each single level of Sharpness costs 4 levels, making it to where adding Sharpness 5 to that OP sword would only cost you about 20 levels. Furthermore, adding Sharpness 5 to any sword will only ever cost 5 levels. This could also be used as a way to further balance the Mending enchantment. Instead of it costing 2 levels to put on a new tool, make it to where it costs 20 levels regardless of the enchantments currently on the item. Now, in the late game, you could always just make an XP farm, which in that case, this change wouldn't really affect the late game all that much, but for the early and mid game progression, I think it would be nice to make Mending just a little bit harder to get so that players rely on the other use for the anvil, which I also have some problems with. The last use for the anvil is that you can repair items using the resource that the item is made of. So for example, you can fix a diamond pickaxe by using diamonds. The problem that I have with this system once again comes down to exponentially increasing XP levels. Having to collect diamonds to fix a diamond pickaxe is already a lot to ask for, but the fact that it costs XP levels to repair an item too doesn't really make sense. It's honestly easier to just get Mending than to use this feature. Not only that, but it costs more and more levels the more that you repair an item, which makes adding enchantments to that tool harder to do later down the line. This once again is another simple fix. I think they should just remove the XP level cost and only make it require the resource to repair a tool in the anvil. That way, it serves as a much better early to mid-game solution to the durability problem if you don't have mending. I believe these changes would be really nice to see for the anvil. It will make it easier to use and it will be more efficient. With that being said, let's move on to the next system that I want to talk about, which is going to be the enchanting table. Now, the enchanting table has gotten a handful of updates throughout the game's life cycle, but it is still not in a place where it can be used as a viable method for enchanting your items. When it originally came out in the beta 1.9, to get the maximum level enchantment roll on your item, you needed 50 levels. Not only that, but it took all the levels away when you enchanted your item. The way the enchanted table works now is that the maximum roll has been dropped to 30 levels. Additionally, you need lapis as well to enchant. It also doesn't use all the levels when you enchant an item. For example, a level 1 enchantment will only cost you 1 level, and a level 3 will only cost 3. While this change is better in comparison to the beta version of the game, it still has some flaws. The problem that I've always had with the enchanting table is that it relies too much on RNG. Not only are the base stats that you can see appear completely randomly, but you can also get additional enchants which are also only visible after you enchant the item. It can be incredibly annoying to enchant your pickaxe with efficiency 5, hoping that you'll get fortune, only to end up with silk touch instead. Then you have to use a grindstone to reset your weapon and try again from scratch. My solution is to add a way to control a bit of the RNG. I think adding bookshelves to increase the enchantment effectiveness is nice, but additionally, I think adding a system where surrounding an enchantment table in bookshelves as well as another additional block on the second layer, something that looks like this, will increase your chances of getting a certain enchantment. For example, making it to where you surround the enchanting table with bookshelves and diamond blocks, let's say, will increase the chance that you will get sharpness on your sword, protection on your armor, and efficiency on your tools. Furthermore, you can make it to where if you enchant a book, these 3 enchantments would appear more often with diamond blocks surrounding the table comparatively to any other block or just using bookshelves. Or make it to where adding a certain block will show the other random enchantments that you will get on an item. This is a simple change that could be implemented to make the enchanting table just a little bit less random. I don't have a problem with RNG. In fact, when done right, it can be a really fun gameplay mechanic. I just wish that there were some more ways to control the randomness at which you get enchantments. Relying solely on the enchanting table can be very tedious and take a long time to get the exact enchantments that you want. And speaking of getting the exact enchantments that you want, that brings us into our next method of getting enchantments, and this is going to be villager trading. Trading with villagers is the most common way that most good players will get their enchantments. You trap a bunch of villagers in a 1x1 hole and constantly break a lectern over and over again until you get the enchantments that you want. What makes this system so good is that it is one of the only ways to reliably get a mending book, which is one of the best enchantments in the game. For the previous entries that we've had, like the enchanting table and the anvil, the problem was that these systems were too underpowered. Villager trading tends to be a bit overpowered. Funnily enough, Mojang has already released an experimental snapshot that, in my opinion, is a really good solution to properly balancing the system. In this experimental snapshot, they changed the trading system with librarians to where you can only get certain enchantments depending on the biome that the villager resides in. For example, instead of hitting the lectern over and over again on the same villager to get mending, the only way to get mending is by finding a swamp villager. I really like this change because not only does it fix the RNG issue of breaking and placing a lectern over and over again, but it also makes villager trading just a little bit harder to accomplish. Making villager trading calls would be a little bit harder to accomplish, but if you're willing to put in the work, you can still very much have a system to get any enchantment book that you want. The only issue I have with this change is that there is still currently no in-game way to find specific biomes and villages that reside in those biomes. Sure, you have chunk base, but a system that requires you to leave the game to learn more about the game is not that great. If they are going through with this system of making villager traits specific to the biome they reside in, I think they should add some maps to the cartographer so that you have a way to find biomes in the game without using chunk base. But overall, I think they should go all in with this experimental snapshot. It's a great way to make villagers still useful while not making them stupidly overpowered for the mid to late game. Like I said before, as long as they add some way to find biomes in the game, I'm all for this change. With that being said, let's move on to the last topic I wanted to discuss in this video, and that is going to be exploration. I wanted to save this topic for the end because I feel like this is the biggest issue currently in the game when it comes to getting enchantments. As it currently stands right now, certain structures in the game will give you random enchanted books, which in theory sounds like a really good idea, but the problem is that the enchanting books are awful. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I've never gotten a good enchantment book from a structure in the game. Usually when I get these books, it ends up being something useless like fire protection or bane of arthropods. And the time I do get a good enchantment like protection or sharpness, it usually is one of the lowest levels of that enchantment. It honestly ends up being faster to just find a village and do the villager method than to find enchantments in structures. Now, when it comes to my solution, it involves a mechanic that has already been in the game for a relatively short amount of time, and that is going to be the trial chambers. In the trial chambers, you have trial vaults, which can only be opened with specific trial keys. There are two different types of vaults: ominous vaults, which require you to do an ominous trial, and the normal trial vaults, which require you to complete a normal trial. I think these trial vaults should be added to the main big structures in the game, making it to where you can get specific enchants from specific vaults in specific structures would be a great way to improve the process of getting enchantments from structures. For example, imagine going to a woodland mansion and instead of getting a selection of random enchantment books from the chest, there are trial vaults and trial spawners. You can make it to where the trial vault spawns the mob specifically designed for that structure, so in this case, it would be all of the Vexes, all of the Vindicators, and then after obtaining a trial vault key, you can open a vault in the structure. Opening an ominous vault, for example, will give you a sharpness 5 book if you're in this structure. You can also make it to where you can only get the water-based enchantments like Death Strider, Aqua Infinity, Respiration, and the Trident enchantments from vaults located at the Ocean Monument. It's a great way, in my opinion, to add more character and use for the structures that we currently have in the game. It wouldn't even be that hard for Mojang to add because it is just implementing a feature that already exists within the game into the other structures. Overall, the enchanting system in Minecraft is currently not that great. I don't necessarily want to do a full rehaul of the entire system. Most of the changes that I proposed are just quality of life things that are somewhat easy to implement, and they don't completely change the system. So many people all the time will say that they need to remove villager trading and mending, which in my opinion is a bit overkill. I think the changes that I proposed in the video would be a good middle ground to improve the system while still making it fit well with the system's original intent. But that's just my opinion. I'd like to hear what you guys think about these changes down below in the comments. As always, leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, I got nothing much else to say, so peace.